Captain Tai-ho Kim stood in the transport shuttle, trying not to throw up. He had been in space dozens of times before, but this was different. This time he was heading to meet aliens, real aliens, the kind that could destroy Earth with a single command. The shuttle pilot, a nervous young woman named Hana, glanced back at him. 5 minutes to docking, Captain. Tai-ho nodded and checked his uniform for the 100th time. Everything had to be perfect. The Velkari Empire controlled half the known galaxy. They had weapons that could turn planets into dust. They had ships the size of cities. And somehow, Earth had caught their attention. The good news was that the Velkari wanted to talk. The bad news was that their reputation scared everyone. They were known as the emotionless ones, the perfect ones. No laughter, no tears, no anger. Just cold efficiency. One wrong word from Tai-ho could mean war. "Prepare for docking," Hana said, her voice shaking slightly. The shuttle connected with the Velkari ship with a soft thud. Tai-ho took a deep breath. He had trained for this moment for 6 months. He knew all the protocols. He had memorized every rule. But standing at the airlock door, he felt like a child about to meet a giant. The door opened with a hiss. 2 Velkari guards stood waiting. They were tall, almost 7 feet, with skin that glowed faintly blue in the dim light. Each had 4 arms, and their faces looked almost human, except for the 3 pupils in each eye. They wore armor that hummed with energy. Neither guard spoke. They simply turned and began walking. Tai-ho followed. The interior of the ship looked like a palace made of crystal and metal. Everything was smooth and perfect. The walls glowed with soft light. The floor felt warm beneath his boots. There were no sounds except their footsteps echoing in the vast corridors. They walked for what felt like hours. Tai-ho wanted to ask questions, but the guards never looked back at him. Finally, they stopped in front of massive doors that stretched up 30 feet high. Strange symbols glowed across the surface. One guard touched a panel. The doors opened silently. The throne room was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above. Pillars of crystal lined both sides of a long walkway. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat the Velkari Queen, Queen Liara. Even from a distance, Tai-ho could feel her presence. She sat perfectly still on a throne that looked carved from a single piece of black stone. Her skin glowed brighter than the guards, shifting between blue and purple. She wore robes that seemed to flow like water. Her 4 arms rested on the throne's armrests. Her face was beautiful in an alien way, and her 6 eyes watched him approach without blinking. Around the throne stood dozens of Velkari advisors and nobles. All of them watched Tai-ho with the same emotionless stares. Tai-ho walked forward, keeping his pace steady, his heart hammered in his chest. When he reached the base of the platform, he bowed low, exactly as he had been taught. "Your Majesty," he said in English. A small device in his ear translated his words into the Velkari language. "I am Captain Tai-ho Kim, representative of Earth and humanity. We are honored by your invitation." Silence. Queen Liara studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke. Her voice was melodic but cold, like music played on ice. "Earth, a young world. Your species barely understands space travel. Why should the Velkari Empire waste time with primitives?" Tai-ho had prepared for this question. "Your Majesty, we may be young, but we have much to offer. Our scientists have made discoveries in quantum physics discoveries we made 10,000 years ago," one advisor interrupted. He was older, with scars across his blue skin. "You offer nothing we need," another advisor spoke. "Your planet has resources but nothing unique. Your technology is centuries behind ours. What value do you bring?" Tai-ho felt sweat on his forehead. This was going worse than the worst-case scenarios. He needed to change tactics. Your Majesty, perhaps we offer something different, a new perspective, fresh ideas. We humans have a saying, 2 heads are better than 1. The translator device buzzed in his ear, struggling with the idiom. Several advisors made hissing sounds. Queen Liara tilted her head slightly. You compare us to body parts? Is this respect? No. No, Your Majesty, I meant... Taiho stopped himself. He was making it worse. He took a breath and tried again. What I mean is that different species working together become stronger. Earth wants to learn from you. And perhaps in small ways, we might share things you haven't considered. Such as? Queen Liara asked. Taiho thought quickly. He pulled up a holographic display from his wrist device. Images of Earth appeared in the air between them. Art, for example, music, stories. We humans create these things. They bring us joy. Joy, the scarred advisor said with disgust. Emotions are weaknesses. The Velkari abandoned such things long ago. That is why we are superior. Commander Vexus speaks truth, another advisor added. Emotions cause chaos, wars, suffering. We evolved beyond them. Queen Liara raised one hand, and everyone fell silent. Continue, Earth representative. Taiho showed them images of paintings, sculptures, music festivals. He tried to explain how humans used creativity to solve problems and build connections. But he could see it wasn't working. The Velkari faces remained blank. Even Queen Liara showed no interest. He was losing them. In desperation, Taiho tried humor. He told a joke about a human, an alien, and a spaceship. The translator device did its best. When he finished, silence filled the throne room. Then the hissing started again. The advisors were angry now. Commander Vexus stepped forward. Your Majesty, this creature mocks us. It wastes our time with primitive nonsense. Perhaps Earth is not ready for contact, another advisor suggested. We should leave them alone for another 1,000 years. Taiho's mission was falling apart. Everything he tried made things worse. He gestured toward the holographic display, trying to bring up new information, something that might save the situation. That's when disaster struck. His hand hit a ceremonial goblet sitting on a small table near the platform. The crystal goblet wobbled. Taiho lunged to catch it. His foot caught on his other ankle. He stumbled, arms flailing, and words burst from his mouth in Korean without thinking. I'm about as graceful as someone trying to walk behind that magnificent... He caught himself mid-sentence as he grabbed the pillar to stop his fall. The goblet settled safely back on the table, but the damage was done. His translator device had broadcast every word to the entire throne room, including the comment about Queen Liara's backside that he'd almost made. Taiho froze. The entire throne room went silent, not the polite silence from before. This was the silence before an execution. Every Velkari in the room stared at him with wide eyes. Commander Vexus's hand moved to his weapon. The guards' armor began to glow brighter as they activated their energy shields. Queen Liara slowly rose from her throne. All 4 of her arms spread wide. Her skin shifted to a deep, angry purple. She descended the steps of the platform, moving toward Taiho with the grace of a predator. She stopped just inches from him. Her 6 eyes locked onto his 2. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but sharp enough to cut steel. You said that about my butt, Earthling. Taiho swallowed hard. His career was over. His life was probably over. Earth's first contact with an advanced alien race would end with humanity's diplomat being executed for commenting on the alien queen's posterior. Well, if he was going to die, he might as well die honest. Yes, Your Majesty, Taiho said, meeting her eyes. I did. And if I'm being completely honest, I stand by it. If I'm going to be executed, let it at least be for telling the truth. The silence stretched on forever. Then something impossible happened. Queen Liara stared at Taiho for what felt like an eternity. Her 6 eyes studied every detail of his face. Taiho could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Around them, the Velkari advisors stood ready to strike. Commander Vexus had his weapon halfway drawn. Then Queen Liara's throat made a sound. It started small. A strange noise, like something rusty trying to move. Her shoulders trembled. The sound grew louder. It came in short bursts at first, then became steadier. Her 4 arms wrapped around her midsection. The queen was laughing. The advisors gasped. Some stepped backward. Others stared with their mouths open. Commander Vexus looked like someone had slapped him across the face. The guards lowered their weapons in confusion. Queen Liara's laughter filled the throne room. It wasn't pretty or smooth. It sounded rough and unpracticed, like someone using a voice they'd forgotten they had. But it was real. After a few moments, the sound became clearer, more natural. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the laughter stopped. Queen Liara straightened. She looked at her own hands as if they belonged to a stranger. Her skin shifted colors rapidly, purple to blue to green and back again. She touched her throat with one hand, clearly surprised by what had just come out of it. "What?" she whispered. Then louder, "What was that?" An old female advisor stepped forward carefully. "Your Majesty, are you unwell? Should we summon the healers?" Queen Liara paused. "I don't know what I am." Commander Vexus pointed at Taiho. "The human did something to her. Some kind of weapon or mind trick. Guards, seize him!" 2 guards moved toward Taiho. But Queen Liara raised one hand. "Stop!" Everyone froze. The queen looked at Taiho again. This time something was different in her eyes. There was curiosity there. Maybe even confusion. "You, human, what did you do to me?" Taiho's mouth felt dry. I didn't do anything, Your Majesty. You laughed." "Laughed," Queen Liara repeated the word slowly. "I remember that word. From the old texts. Before the Great Purging, we used to do that." 300 years ago, an elderly advisor said quietly. "Before Your Majesty chose to remove such reactions from your being." Queen Liara turned to face her throne but didn't sit. She stood with her back to everyone, silent. One of her hands touched her face. 300 years, she said softly. "I haven't felt anything in 300 years. The throne room remained deathly quiet. Nobody seemed to know what to do. This had never happened before. Queen Liara, the emotionless ruler, the perfect leader who had guided the empire through countless crises with cold logic, had just experienced a feeling. Finally, Commander Vexus spoke. "Your Majesty, this is exactly why contact with primitive species is dangerous. They are infected with emotional weakness. This human has contaminated you with his inferior nature." Queen Liara turned around slowly. "Contaminated?" "Yes, Your Majesty." Vexus bowed his head. "Emotions are a disease. They must be eliminated. The human should be destroyed, and we should quarantine Earth before this spreads." "Commander Vexus," Queen Liara said calmly, "I will decide what happens to the human. Remove him to the guest quarters. He is not to be harmed. Place guards at his door, but he is to be treated as a guest, not a prisoner." Vexus's face showed something rare for a Velkari, anger, but he bowed. "As you command, Your Majesty." 2 guards approached Taiho, but gently this time. They escorted him out of the throne room. As he walked past Queen Liara, Taiho dared to look at her. She was watching him with those 6 eyes, and he could swear he saw something in them. Interest, wonder, maybe even fear. The walk to the guest quarters felt different from before. The guards still didn't speak, but they weren't as harsh. They led him through more crystal corridors until they reached a door. It opened to reveal a surprisingly comfortable room. There was a bed, a chair, a table, and a large window showing the stars outside. "Wait here," one guard said. It was the first time either of them had spoken to him. Then they left, and the door sealed shut. Taiho collapsed onto the chair. His hands were shaking. He'd survived. Somehow, impossibly, he'd survived insulting an alien queen and lived to tell about it. More than that, he'd made her laugh. He touched his translator device. "Emergency log, Captain Taiho Kim, date, I don't even know anymore. I just made first contact with the Velkari Empire. It went completely wrong and somehow completely right at the same time. I accidentally insulted Queen Liara. She laughed. I don't think she's supposed to be able to laugh. I don't know what happens next." He looked out the window at the moon and Earth beyond it. Somewhere down there, people were waiting to hear if first contact was successful. He had no idea what to tell them. Hours passed. Taiho tried to sleep, but couldn't. He paced the room. He looked out the window. He wondered if the guards would come back to execute him after all. Finally, the door opened. A Velkari woman entered. She was shorter than the others, with lighter blue skin and robes that marked her as some kind of official. She carried a tray with food and water. "Captain Kim," she said formally. "I am Attendant Sierra. I bring you sustenance. The food has been checked and is safe for human biology." "Thank you," Taiho said, taking the tray. The food looked strange, but smelled okay. "Can I ask, what's going to happen to me?" Sierra hesitated. "I should not speak of such things." "Please," Taiho said. "I'm going crazy here not knowing." Sierra looked at the door, then back at him. She lowered her voice. "The Queen has been in her private chamber since the audience. She has not spoken to anyone. The advisors are meeting in secret. Commander Vexus wants you executed. Others want Earth quarantined. A few—" She paused. "A few think what happened was important." "Important how?" "The Queen hasn't shown emotion since before I was born. My grandmother told me stories of the old days before the Great Purging when Velkari felt things. Joy, sadness, love. Then the Empire decided emotions made us weak. All Velkari underwent procedures to remove their emotional centers. The Queen went first to show leadership." Taiho sat down slowly. "She chose to stop feeling?" "To become perfect," Sierra said. "But there are some of us who wonder, what did we lose? My grandmother said we used to create beautiful art, music, poetry. Now we only create weapons and ships." She shook her head. "I should not be telling you this. Eat your food, Captain Kim. Tomorrow, the Queen will decide your fate." Sierra left quickly. Taiho looked at the food but didn't eat. His mind raced. The Velkari had chosen to become emotionless. They thought it made them better, but something in his stupid, clumsy comment had broken through 300 years of Queen Liara's emotional suppression. He thought about Earth, about humanity. Humans felt everything, too much sometimes. Anger, joy, sadness, love, fear, all of it messy and complicated. But that was what made humans human. Take away emotions, and what was left? The next morning, the door opened again. This time, it was Commander Vexus himself, with 4 guards. "Come with me, human," Vexus said coldly. Taiho stood. "Where are we going?" "The Queen wants to see you, alone." They walked through the ship's corridors. Other Velkari stopped and stared as they passed. Word had clearly spread about what happened. Some looked curious, others looked angry. They stopped at a different door, smaller than the throne room entrance. Vexus turned to Taiho. "Whatever you do in there, human, know this. If you harm our queen in any way, I will personally hunt down everyone on your planet." "I'm not going to hurt her," Taiho said. "Emotional corruption is a kind of harm," Vexus replied. He opened the door and pushed Taiho inside. The room was a garden, a real garden, with plants and trees and a small stream. In the center stood Queen Liara. She wore simpler robes now. Only 2 of her 4 arms were visible. the other two hidden in her clothing. She stood looking at a tree with silver leaves. She didn't turn around when Tai-Ho entered. "Do you know what this tree is, human?" she asked quietly. "No, Your Majesty." "It is from my homeworld, the last of its kind. When we conquered emotions, we also stopped caring about things like preserving nature. Why does beauty matter to beings who cannot appreciate it?" She finally turned to face him. "I planted this tree 300 years ago, the day before my procedure. I wanted to remember what it felt like to think something was beautiful." Tai-Ho said nothing. "Yesterday, you made me feel something," Queen Liara continued. "Do you understand what that means? For 3 centuries, I have been empty, a hollow thing making decisions without mercy or joy or fear. I thought that made me a good ruler." "Did it?" Tai-Ho asked carefully. Queen Liara was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know anymore." Queen Liara walked closer to Tai-Ho. In the garden's soft light, she looked less like an alien ruler and more like someone lost. She sat on a stone bench near the silver tree and gestured for him to sit across from her. "Tell me about laughter," she said. Tai-Ho blinked. "Your Majesty?" "You heard me. Explain laughter. Why do humans do it? What purpose does it serve?" Tai-Ho thought carefully. "Well, we laugh when something is funny, or when we're happy, sometimes when we're nervous. It's a reaction to things. But why?" Queen Liara leaned forward. "Laughter doesn't help you survive. It doesn't make you stronger. It serves no practical purpose. Yet yesterday, when you said those words about when you made that comment, something inside me that had been frozen for 300 years broke free. I need to understand why." "Maybe that's the point," Tai-Ho said slowly. "Not everything has to be practical. Humans laugh because it feels good, because it connects us to other people, because life is hard sometimes and laughter makes it easier." Queen Liara stood and paced. "Life is hard for everyone. That's why the Velkari chose to remove emotions. Logic is clean, efficient. Emotions cause wars, betrayal, pain. They also cause love, friendship, and hope," Tai-Ho countered. "Sure, emotions can hurt, but they also make life worth living." "Worth living," Queen Liara repeated. She looked at her hands. "I've lived for over 500 years. The last 300 of them I've simply existed. I ruled. I made decisions. I conquered. But was I really living?" Before Tai-Ho could answer, the garden door opened. An advisor rushed in. "Your Majesty, forgive the intrusion. The council demands an audience. They say it's urgent." Queen Liara sighed. "Very well. Tell them I will meet them in 1 hour." She turned to Tai-Ho. "You will remain here as my guest. We will speak again." The days that followed were strange. Tai-Ho stayed in his guest quarters most of the time, but Queen Liara summoned him regularly. Sometimes they met in the garden, other times in a small meeting room. She always asked questions about human emotions, culture, and life. "Why do humans cry?" she asked one day. "When we're sad, or hurt, or sometimes when we're really happy. That makes no sense. Why would happiness and sadness produce the same reaction?" "I don't know," Tai-Ho admitted. "Emotions are complicated. They don't always make sense." Another day, she asked about anger. "When humans are angry, don't they make poor decisions?" "Sometimes," Tai-Ho said, "but anger can also drive us to fix problems, to stand up against wrong things. It depends on how you use it." Queen Liara absorbed every answer like she was learning to be a person again. On the 5th day, another human arrived on the Velkari ship, Dr. Yuna Park, Earth's top xenobiologist and diplomat. She was brilliant, professional, and furious with Tai-Ho. "You commented on the alien queen's posterior?" Yuna hissed at him in Korean when they were alone. "That was your diplomatic strategy?" "It was an accident," Tai-Ho protested. An accident that somehow worked, Yuna said, shaking her head. Command sent me because they didn't trust you to finish negotiations. But from what I hear, the Queen won't talk to anyone except you. That was true. Queen Liara had agreed to meet with Yuna briefly, but she spent most of her time with Taiho. Yuna handled the actual diplomatic work, trade agreements, technology exchanges, cultural protocols. But whenever discussions touched on anything emotional or cultural, Queen Liara wanted Taiho's input. She's fascinated by humans, Yuna told Taiho after a week. Specifically by our emotional nature. Half the Velkari advisors think we're corrupting her. The other half are curious. What about Commander Vexus? Taiho asked. Yuna's expression darkened. He wants Earth quarantined. He thinks emotions are a plague. He's been giving speeches to the military about maintaining Velkari purity. That night, Queen Liara summoned Taiho to a state dinner. The massive dining hall was filled with Velkari nobles and advisors. Taiho sat at the Queen's left side, a position of honor that made Commander Vexus glare from across the table. The food was strange but good. The conversation was stiff and formal. Every Velkari spoke in careful, logical terms about trade and politics. Nobody showed any emotion. It was like eating dinner with very polite robots. Then Queen Liara did something unexpected. "Captain Taiho," she said loudly, drawing everyone's attention, "you promised to tell me a story from your childhood. Please, share it now." Taiho nearly choked on his drink. "Your Majesty, I don't think everyone wants to hear." "I command it," she said, but there was something playful in her voice. "Tell us about growing up on Earth." Taiho swallowed hard. All eyes were on him. "Well, okay. When I was 7, I lived in Busan. That's a city by the ocean. My grandmother lived with us. She was tough, scary even. She had all these rules about respect and proper behavior." He told them about the time he and his friend Minho had stolen cookies from his grandmother's kitchen. They'd eaten them on the roof and gotten caught. His grandmother hadn't yelled. She'd just looked at them with disappointment, which was somehow worse. Then she'd made them help her bake new cookies and deliver them to all the neighbors with apologies. "I learned more from that than any punishment," Taiho said. "She taught me that mistakes aren't the end of the world. You acknowledge them, make them right, and move on." As he spoke, he forgot where he was. He got animated, using his hands to gesture. He imitated his grandmother's stern voice, then Minho's panicked expression. When he described how they'd tried to hide the evidence by throwing cookie crumbs off the roof, only to have them land on his grandmother's head when she walked underneath, several Velkari made strange sounds. Then Queen Liara laughed. It was clearer than before, more natural. The sound rang through the dining hall. Some Velkari looked shocked, others looked curious. A few looked almost envious. When the laughter faded, Queen Liara had tears in her eyes. Actual tears. She touched her face in wonder. What is this?" "You're crying, Your Majesty," Yuna said gently. "But I'm not sad," Queen Liara said, confused. "Sometimes humans cry when we laugh too hard," Taiho explained. "Or when we're moved by something. Tears aren't just for sadness." Queen Liara studied the moisture on her fingers. 300 years, she whispered. "I forgot what this felt like." Commander Vexus stood abruptly. "This is obscene. Your Majesty, this human is corrupting you with his primitive emotional disease. You must undergo reconditioning immediately." "Reconditioning?" Queen Liara's voice turned cold. "You dare suggest I need correction, Commander?" Vexus bowed, but didn't back down. "I suggest what is best for the Empire. Emotions will destroy us as they nearly did before the Great Purging. This human should be removed, and contact with Earth should end." "The Commander raises valid concerns," another advisor said carefully. "Your Majesty, you have not been yourself lately. Perhaps a medical examination." I am more myself than I have been in centuries. Queen Liara stood, her forearms spreading wide. You call emotions a disease. But what if removing them was the disease? What if we cut out part of ourselves and called it progress? The dining hall erupted in shocked whispers. This was heresy. The Great Purging was the foundation of modern Velkhari society. An elderly female advisor rose. Your Majesty speaks of dangerous ideas. The Great Purging saved us from chaos. Before it, Velkhari killed each other over love and jealousy. We fought wars over pride. Emotions nearly destroyed our species. Yet humans have emotions, Queen Liara countered. And they survived. They built civilizations. They create art and music. They connect with each other in ways we've forgotten. They also fight wars, Vexus said sharply. They kill each other. They're primitives barely out of their caves. Taiho felt heat rise in his chest. Before he could stop himself, he spoke. We might be primitive by your standards, but at least we're alive. Really alive. We feel things. We love. We laugh. We cry. Yes, sometimes we fight, but we also forgive. We hurt, but we also heal. You Velkhari have perfect logic and perfect control, but what do you have that makes you want to get up in the morning? Silence fell. Commander Vexus's skin turned dark purple with rage. How dare you speak to us that way, human? He speaks truth, a quiet voice said. A young Velkhari woman stood. My name is Mera. I am a junior advisor. I've studied the old texts from before the Great Purging. They speak of beauty, passion, connection. Things we've lost. When I read them, I feel like something is missing inside me. Mera, sit down, an older advisor commanded. But another Velkhari stood. Then another. Within moments, a dozen younger Velkhari were on their feet. I want to understand what it means to feel, one said. I'm tired of being empty, another admitted. Commander Vexus looked around in horror. This is the human infection spreading. Your Majesty, you must stop this before it's too late. Queen Liara looked at all the standing Velkhari. Something shifted in her expression. Commander Vexus, you're right. This is spreading, but perhaps it's not an infection. Perhaps it's an awakening. That night, after the disastrous dinner, Yuna cornered Taiho in his quarters. You're starting a revolution. I didn't mean to, Taiho said. Doesn't matter. Half the Velkhari want to learn about emotions. The other half want to execute us. This could go very wrong very fast. She was right. But when Taiho looked out the window at Earth below, he thought about his grandmother's words. Mistakes aren't the end of the world. You acknowledge them, make them right, and move on. The question was whether the Velkhari were ready to admit that maybe, just maybe, removing emotions had been a mistake. The alarm woke Taiho in the middle of the ship's night cycle. Red lights flashed in his quarters. The door burst open and 2 guards rushed in, but these weren't his usual guards. Their armor bore different markings. Come with us, human, now! One barked. What's happening? Taiho asked. But they grabbed his arms and pulled him into the corridor. The ship was chaos. Velkhari ran in every direction. Weapons fire echoed from somewhere distant. The guards dragged Taiho through the confusion until they reached a secure room. Inside, he found Yuna, Queen Liara, and about a dozen other Velkhari. Taiho, thank God, Yuna said. She looked terrified. What's going on? Queen Liara turned to face him. Her skin flickered between colors rapidly. A sign of stress, Taiho had learned. Commander Vexus has staged a military coup. He's taken control of half the fleet. He claims I'm unfit to rule because of what you awakened in me. One of the Velkhari advisors, the young woman named Mira, spoke quickly. It happened an hour ago. Vexus broadcast a message to the entire empire. He says the Queen has been corrupted by human emotional disease. He's declaring himself protector of the Empire until she can be cured. Half the military sided with him immediately, another advisor added grimly. The other half remains loyal to the Queen. We're in a civil war. The ship shuddered from an explosion. Tejo stumbled and grabbed a wall for support. Can't you just talk to him? Negotiate? Vexus doesn't negotiate, Queen Liara said. He believes emotions are a virus that will destroy Velkari civilization. He sees me as patient zero. And Earth. She looked at Tejo. Earth is where the virus started. The meaning hit Tejo like a punch. He's going to attack Earth. Yes, Queen Liara said softly. If Vexus wins, he'll sterilize your planet. He'll eliminate the source of the infection before it can spread further. Yuna grabbed Tejo's arm. We need to contact Earth. Warn them. Communications are jammed, Mira said. Vexus controls most of the long-range systems. Another explosion rocked the ship. A loyal guard burst in. Your Majesty, we need to evacuate. Vexus's forces are boarding the ship. We have a shuttle ready. Queen Liara nodded. Everyone, move quickly. They ran through the corridors, guards surrounding them. They could hear fighting nearby, energy weapons firing, shouting in the Velkari language. They reached the hangar bay where a small shuttle waited. Get the humans aboard first, Queen Liara commanded. Your Majesty, you need to leave now, a guard insisted. But Queen Liara was looking at a communication panel on the wall. Wait. If I can access the main broadcast system from here, I can speak to the Empire. If the Velkari people hear me... There's no time, Yuna shouted. Tejo saw movement behind them. Vexus's soldiers were entering the hangar. We have to go now! Queen Liara made her choice. She ran to the panel and began entering commands with her 4 hands moving in a blur. Get to the shuttle. I'll follow. On the panel's screen, a broadcast symbol appeared. Queen Liara was now transmitting to every Velkari ship, station, and colony in the Empire. My people, she began, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. This is Queen Liara. Commander Vexus has betrayed his oath. He claims I am corrupted, that emotions are a disease. But I am here to tell you the truth. Energy blasts hit near the shuttle. The guards returned fire, creating a barrier between Queen Liara and Vexus's soldiers. 300 years ago, I chose to remove my emotions. I thought it made me a better ruler. I thought logic and efficiency were all that mattered. But I was wrong. Tejo saw Vexus himself enter the hangar, surrounded by soldiers. The commander's face twisted with rage. Queen Liara continued broadcasting. I have lived for centuries in a hollow existence. I made decisions, conquered worlds, built an empire, but I never truly lived. Not until a human, a primitive, emotional human, reminded me what I had lost. Shut down that transmission, Vexus roared. His soldiers advanced, but Queen Liara's guards held them back. She kept talking. Emotions are not a weakness. They are what make life meaningful. Yes, they can cause pain, but they also create beauty, connection, purpose. We Velkari cut out our hearts and called it evolution, but we've been walking corpses ever since. More of Vexus's forces poured into the hangar. The loyal guards were outnumbered. Your Majesty, please, Mira screamed from the shuttle door. Queen Liara looked at the shuttle, then back at the camera. Vexus claims he will cure me and destroy Earth, but what he really fears is that you will all start to question, that you will wonder what we lost, that you will want to feel again. Vexus was getting closer. Energy blasts were everywhere now. I am your queen, and I tell you this, choose life over existence, choose feeling over emptiness, choose... An energy blast hit the communication panel, destroying it. The transmission cut off. Move! Tejo shouted. He ran from the shuttle and grabbed Queen Liara's arm. Together, they sprinted for the shuttle as guards covered them. They made it inside. The shuttle door sealed shut just as Vexus's forces reached it. The pilot engaged engines, and they launched from the hangar, barely escaping as energy weapons pounded the shuttle's shields. Inside the cramped shuttle, everyone was silent except for heavy breathing. Queen Liara sat with her head in her hands. Did it work? Did anyone hear? The transmission reached the fleet, the pilot confirmed. But I don't know if it changed anything. Taiho sat beside Queen Liara. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. She looked at him. Or the most foolish. I may have just convinced the Empire that Vexus is right. That I'm too emotional to lead. Or, Yuna said quietly, you just showed them what real leadership looks like. Leaders don't hide from hard truths. They face them. The shuttle shook as weapons fire chased them. Where are we going? Taiho asked. Earth, Queen Liara said. If Vexus is going to destroy your world, we have to warn them. Give them time to prepare. Your Majesty, Mara said hesitantly. Our shuttle can't outrun Vexus's fleet. We'll never reach Earth before they catch us. Then we'll fight, Queen Liara said. There was something new in her voice. Determination. Anger, emotions she'd buried for 3 centuries. The pilot's console lit up with warnings. Multiple ships pursuing. Wait, he paused, studying the screen. Some of them are ours, loyalist ships. How many? Queen Liara asked. 20, 30, they're still coming. Your Majesty, half the fleet is following us. Your broadcast worked. A communication came through. The face on the screen was another Velkari commander. Your Majesty, this is Commander Jorah. My battle group stands with you. What are your orders? Queen Liara stood straighter. Protect the shuttle. We're heading to Earth. Vexus cannot be allowed to destroy that world. Understood. But Your Majesty, Vexus has more ships. This will be a difficult battle. All worthwhile battles are, Queen Liara said. They flew toward Earth with a fleet following them, half loyal to the Queen, half loyal to Vexus. Behind them, the civil war was beginning in earnest. Taiho watched through the window as Velkari ships fought each other. It was terrible and beautiful at the same time, an empire tearing itself apart over a question humans had answered long ago. Is it better to feel or not to feel? I'm sorry, Taiho said to Queen Liara. This is my fault. If I hadn't made that stupid comment, then I would still be dead inside, Queen Liara interrupted. Better to feel pain than to feel nothing at all. The battle grew fiercer as they approached Earth. Vexus's fleet was larger and better armed. Loyalist ships exploded around them. The shuttle's shields weakened under constant fire. We're not going to make it, the pilot said. Taiho looked at Earth growing larger in the window. His home, his family, everyone he'd ever known. And Vexus would destroy it all. There has to be something we can do, Yuna said desperately. Queen Liara was quiet, thinking. Then she looked at Taiho. Your shuttle, the small one you arrived in, is it still in the hangar? The hangar we just escaped from? Taiho asked. Yeah, probably. Why? Because that shuttle has human technology. Different frequencies. If we could reach it, we could send a message to Earth that Vexus can't jam. Your Majesty, that's suicide, Mira protested. We barely escaped the first time. I know, Queen Liara said. She looked at Taiho. But it might be the only way to save your world. And after everything you've done for me, she touched his shoulder with one of her hands. I owe you this. We'll do it together, Taiho said. Yuna grabbed his arm. Taiho? No, you can't. But Taiho was already moving toward the pilot. Can you get us back to the main ship without Vexus knowing? The pilot looked at Queen Liara. She nodded. It will be dangerous, the pilot warned. Very dangerous. Everything worth doing is, Taiho said, echoing the Queen's earlier words. Queen Liara smiled. It was small and sad, but it was real. "When did you become so brave?" "I learned from a queen," Tai-Ho replied. The pilot brought their shuttle back to the main ship using a secret maintenance tunnel that most people had forgotten existed. They docked quietly in a lower hangar, far from where the fighting had been. Tai-Ho, Queen Liara, and 4 loyal guards moved through the dark corridors. The ship felt different now, empty and dangerous. They could hear distant sounds of battle. Vexus's forces controlled most of the ship, but they were focused on the main areas. "The hangar where your shuttle is stored should be 2 levels up," Queen Liara whispered. They climbed through maintenance shafts and service passages. Once they had to hide while a patrol of Vexus's soldiers passed. Tai-Ho held his breath, pressed against the wall next to Queen Liara. He could feel her heartbeat, fast and afraid. She was feeling fear, maybe for the first time in 3 centuries. After the soldiers passed, they continued. Finally, they reached the hangar. Tai-Ho's small Earth shuttle sat exactly where he'd left it weeks ago. "I'll send the message," Tai-Ho said, running to the shuttle. He climbed inside and powered up the communication system. His hands moved quickly over the familiar controls. "This is Captain Tae-Ho Kim calling Earth Defense Command. Emergency code Alpha 7. Earth is in immediate danger. A hostile alien fleet is approaching. You need to evacuate population centers and prepare all defenses. Repeat. This is not a drill. Well done, human." Tai-Ho spun around. Commander Vexus stood at the hangar entrance with 20 soldiers. He'd been waiting for them. "Did you really think I wouldn't predict this?" Vexus said coldly. "I knew the Queen would try to warn your primitive planet. I simply had to wait." Queen Liara stepped between Vexus and the shuttle, her 4 arms spread wide. "Vexus, this has gone far enough. Stand down." "Stand down?" Vexus laughed, but it was a cruel sound, not like Queen Liara's laughter. "You've gone mad, Your Majesty. You put the entire empire at risk because of emotional weakness. I'm saving our people from your corruption." "By starting a civil war?" Queen Liara challenged. "By removing a disease before it spreads." Vexus raised his weapon, pointing it at Tai-Ho's shuttle. "The human dies first, then you, Your Majesty, will undergo reconditioning. When you're properly empty again, you can return to the throne." "No," Queen Liara said firmly. "It's not a request." Vexus prepared to fire, but before he could pull the trigger, the hangar doors exploded inward. Loyalist soldiers poured in, led by Commander Jorah. "Stand down, Vexus," Jorah commanded. "Your coup has failed. 2/3 of the fleet has sided with the Queen." Vexus looked around at the soldiers surrounding him. His face showed something Velkhari rarely displayed, desperation. "You're all fools. Emotions will destroy us like they nearly did before." "Or they'll save us," a new voice said. The young advisor, Mira, stepped forward. "I've been researching the old histories, Vexus, the ones you wanted destroyed. You know what I found?" "I don't care about ancient propaganda," Vexus spat. "The Great Purging didn't happen because emotions were destroying us," Mira continued. "It happened because a small group of leaders wanted absolute control. Emotions make people question. They make people connect. They make it harder to control a population. The Great Purging wasn't about saving the Velkhari. It was about power." Shocked silence filled the hangar. That's heresy," one of Vexus's soldiers said, but his voice wavered. "Is it?" Queen Liara asked. "Think about it. We're the most powerful empire in the galaxy. We have everything. Yet how many of you truly enjoy your lives? How many of you have anything worth living for beyond duty?" One by one, Vexus's soldiers lowered their weapons. The lies they'd been told for generations were crumbling. Vexus saw his support disappearing. He made a desperate move, lunging toward Tai-Ho with his weapon. But Queen Liara was faster. She moved between them, her 4 arms knocking the weapon away. They struggled. Vexus was stronger, but Queen Liara fought with something he didn't have, something worth fighting for. She pinned him to the ground. "I could kill you," Queen Liara said quietly, her hand at his throat. Logic would say that's the smart choice. You're a threat to everything I'm trying to build. Then do it, Vexus gasped. Prove you're still Velkari. Queen Liara held him there for a long moment. Taiho could see her struggling with the decision. Then she stood up and stepped back. No, she said. Killing you would be easy. But I'm going to do something harder. I'm going to show you mercy. You'll be exiled to a colony world. No power, no position. Just a chance to live and maybe someday understand what you've been missing. Vexus stared at her in disbelief. Mercy. That's weakness. Then I'm weak, Queen Liara said, and take him away. Guards led Vexus out of the hangar. As he passed Queen Liara, he said quietly, You've doomed us all. Or saved us, she replied. Time will tell. The battle ended within hours. With Vexus captured and most of his forces surrendering, the civil war was over almost as quickly as it had begun. Queen Liara's message had reached more hearts than anyone expected, but the hard work was just beginning. Taiho stood in the observation deck weeks later, watching Earth turn slowly below. Dr. Yuna Park joined him, holding 2 cups of coffee. She'd managed to get Earth to send supplies. You changed the galaxy, Yuna said, handing him a cup. I accidentally insulted an alien queen, Taiho corrected. Everything else just happened. That's not what the queen says. She told the council that you reminded her what it means to be alive. Taiho sipped his coffee. How are the negotiations going? Better than expected. Earth and the Velkari Empire have signed a mutual defense treaty, trade agreements, cultural exchange programs. We're even sending teachers to Velkari colonies to help them, well, learn how to feel again. That's going to be weird, Taiho said. Everything about this is weird, Yuna agreed. She smiled. But good weird. Who knew humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy would be teaching aliens how to laugh? Queen Liara's transformation continued. She didn't become human. She was still Velkari, still powerful, still a queen. But she was different now. She smiled sometimes. She got angry when things were unjust. She showed kindness to people who needed it. Not all Velkari adapted well. Some colonies rejected the changes, preferring their old ways. Queen Liara didn't force them. Change must be chosen, she said, not commanded. But slowly, across the empire, things shifted. Velkari artists started creating again. Musicians rediscovered old instruments. Poets wrote verses about feelings they'd forgotten existed. It wasn't perfect. There were conflicts, arguments, disagreements, all the messy parts of having emotions. But there was also laughter, joy, love, connection. 3 months after the coup, Queen Liara invited Taiho to the observation deck. She'd asked to speak with him privately. I've been thinking, she said, standing beside him at the window, about what you said during our first meeting about mistakes. Which thing I said? Taiho asked. I said a lot of stupid stuff. She smiled. All of it was stupid, and all of it was exactly what I needed to hear. She was quiet for a moment. I made a mistake 300 years ago. I thought removing emotions would make me a better ruler. Instead, it made me a hollow one. But you fixed it, Taiho said. Because of you. Because you were brave enough to be honest, to be yourself. She turned to face him fully. Humans are remarkable, Taiho, not because you're advanced or powerful, but because you're so fearlessly alive. We're just being human, Taiho said. We don't know any other way. That's what makes you special. Queen Liara looked back at Earth. Your planet is so small, so fragile. You've barely left your solar system. By any logical measure, you should be insignificant. But instead, you've changed the course of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. So what happens now? Taiho asked. Now? Now we learn from each other. Velkari have much to teach humans about technology and science. And humans... She paused. Humans will teach us how to live. No pressure or anything, Teho joked. Queen Liara laughed, that beautiful sound that had started everything. You know, Captain Kim, I've been meaning to ask you something. That first day, in the throne room, what exactly were you going to say before you caught yourself? Taiho felt his face get hot. Your Majesty, I think we should maybe leave that in the past. Oh no, Queen Liara said, and there was genuine mischief in her voice, an emotion she was still learning. You can't get out of it that easily. You said you stood by your comment, so tell me, what did you really think? Taiho looked at her, at this powerful ancient being who had learned to feel again, who had risked everything because of one human's clumsy honesty. I thought, he said carefully, that even alien queens deserve to be appreciated for all of who they are. Queen Liara studied him for a long moment. Then she did something completely unexpected. She bumped his shoulder with one of her arms, the same way human friends do. Good answer, Earthling, she said. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching Earth and the Velkari fleet orbiting peacefully around it. Two very different species, learning to understand each other. All because one human had accidentally made an alien queen laugh. Taiho thought about his grandmother again. About her lesson. Mistakes aren't the end of the world. Sometimes, they're the beginning of something better. He'd made the biggest diplomatic mistake in human history, and somehow, impossibly, it had saved two civilizations. Queen Liara, he said. Yes? Thank you. For giving humanity a chance. For being brave enough to change. Thank you for being brave enough to be honest, she replied. Even when honesty got you in trouble. They both smiled. Earth turned below them, safe and protected. The Velkari Empire stretched out beyond, slowly waking up from a 300-year sleep. And somewhere in the galaxy, other species watched and wondered what had happened. How had primitive humans changed the Velkari? The answer was simple. They'd reminded everyone that feeling something, anything, was better than feeling nothing at all. That being perfectly empty wasn't the same as being perfectly whole, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is laugh at yourself and admit you were wrong. In the end, that's what humans did best. They made mistakes. They felt things too deeply. They were clumsy and awkward and completely imperfect. But they were alive. Truly, messily, beautifully alive. And now, thanks to one captain's inappropriate comment about an alien queen's posterior, the Velkari were learning to be alive too. The universe felt bigger and smaller at the same time. Bigger because there was so much to explore and learn. Smaller because two completely different species had found common ground in the simplest truth. Everyone deserves to feel. Taiho looked at Queen Liara one more time. She was gazing at Earth with something like wonder in her 6 eyes. What are you thinking? He asked. I'm thinking, she said slowly, that your world is beautiful, and I'm glad I lived long enough to see it. Really see it, not just observe it, but feel something about it. That's called appreciation, Taiho said. It's a good feeling. I'm beginning to understand that, Queen Liara said. I'm beginning to understand a lot of things. And in that moment, watching an ancient alien queen discover emotions for the first time in 3 centuries, Taiho realized something important. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons or their intelligence. It was their ability to connect, to feel, to laugh at themselves and find beauty in imperfection. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, and that gift had just changed everything.